The Ambassador's Choice. Ambassador Elena Chen stood at the viewing window of the Galactic Concordat's grand chamber, watching the dance of binary stars outside. The crystalline spires of Capital Station caught their light, fracturing it into 1,000 colors. Such beauty and imperfection, she thought, noting how the natural flickering of the stars contrasted with the station's mathematically precise architecture. Ambassador Chen, a melodious voice interrupted her contemplation. Still refusing genetic optimization, I see. Elena turned to face Archon Vexthor, his iridescent skin rippling with perfectly programmed patterns. The Luminary leader's disappointment radiated from every enhanced pore. Natural selection served humanity well enough to get us here, she replied with a diplomatic smile. Served you well enough to become a minor power, perhaps. The Archon's perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of practiced concern. But we are gathered for more pressing matters. The High King of the Luminary has passed. Elena's diplomatic training kicked in, analyzing the subtle shifts in the chamber's atmosphere. The Luminary controlled half the known galaxy's quantum communication networks. Their king's death would reshape alliances for generations. The king's will is unusual, Vexthor continued, his tone suggesting he'd rather be discussing a waste management crisis. He has named you, Ambassador Chen, as guardian of his only daughter, Princess Cathara. The chamber erupted in whispers. Elena maintained her composure, though her mind raced. I'm honored, but surely there are more qualified candidates among your people. The princess is. Vexthor's perfect features twisted slightly, unsuitable for our society's standards. A hologram materialized in the chamber's center. Elena's breath caught. Princess Cathara stood proud, but she was nothing like the other luminary. Where they gleamed with metallic perfection, her skin held patterns like the aurora borealis, shifting and changing without programming. Her eyes weren't the uniform gold of her people, but swirled with colors that reminded Elena of Earth's oceans. As you can see, Vexthor continued, the princess rejected all genetic optimization. She remains natural. He spoke the word like it was a disease. Elena studied Cathara's hologram closer. Behind the princess's defiant stance, she caught glimpses of carefully hidden pain. How many years had she endured such judgments? The council would understand if you declined this burden, Vexthor offered smoothly. It would be cruel to expect you to manage such a challenging ward. Elena's eyes narrowed. I request to meet the princess in person. She kept her voice level, diplomatic. Unless the council wishes to deny me this basic courtesy. The chamber doors parted silently. Princess Cathara entered, her unusual skin casting dancing lights across the polished floors. She moved with natural grace, head held high despite the poorly concealed sneers around her. Ambassador Chen. Cathara's voice carried undertones that no optimization could replicate. I apologize if my father's choice has caused you difficulty. Elena stepped forward, letting her diplomatic training guide her. Your Highness, the only difficulty would be failing to properly consider such an honor. She studied the princess's face, noting how her skin's patterns shifted with emotion. Though I admit curiosity about why your father chose me. A subtle change in the princess's expression, amusement. Ambassador, you haven't yet asked if my condition is contagious. Elena couldn't help but laugh, earning several gasps from the council members. I'm more concerned with whether you'll mind having a guardian who lacks any genetic enhancements whatsoever. Was that a smile tugging at Cathara's lips? I suppose we could have you optimized. Please don't, Elena grinned. I've grown rather attached to my imperfections. Ambassador Chen, Vexthor interrupted, his tone precisely calibrated for maximum condescension. While this is all very entertaining, you cannot seriously be considering acceptance. Think of your career, the diplomatic implications, the social obligations. Elena studied Cathara's face, seeing past the supposed flaws to the sharp intelligence beneath. She thought of Earth, where beauty came in endless varieties. She thought of the late king's reputation for subtle rebellion against his society's rigid standards. "High Council," Elena said clearly, knowing her words would be recorded for history, "I formally accept King Zoran's bequest and guardianship of Princess Cathara, with all rights and responsibilities thereof." The chamber exploded into chaos. Vexthor's perfect features contorted in shock, but Elena kept her eyes on Cathara, watching as the princess's skin rippled with barely contained emotion. "Ambassador," Cathara said softly, her voice carrying harmonics that made Elena's skin tingle, "you may come to regret this decision." Elena stepped forward, offering her hand in the formal luminary manner. "Your Highness, I found that the best decisions in my life were the ones everyone else thought I'd regret." As Cathara placed her hand in Elena's, the princess's skin cast aurora patterns across them both. Elena heard the whispers, felt the political storm brewing, but in that moment, all she could think was that she'd never seen anyone quite so perfectly unique in all her years among the stars. Beauty in the flaws. The private chambers of the Earth Embassy hummed with unfamiliar energy as Elena led Cathara inside. Here, away from the judgmental eyes of the Concordat, the princess's aurora-like skin pulsed with freer patterns, painting the walls with dancing light. "I've never seen organic decor before," Cathara observed, touching a potted orchid with careful fingers. Where her skin met the flower, subtle patterns of bioluminescence rippled through its petals. Elena stared, startled. "That's not supposed to happen," she said carefully. Cathara withdrew her hand as if burned. "My apologies. Another flaw in my design." "Not a flaw." Elena moved closer, diplomatic instincts warring with scientific curiosity. "An ability, one I've never seen in any optimized luminary." "The council calls it regression." Cathara's skin darkened to deep indigo. "A throwback to our primitive state, before we achieved perfection." Elena studied the orchid, still glowing faintly. Interesting definition of perfection they have, eliminating abilities rather than enhancing them. Before Cathara could respond, Elena's security system chimed. "Ambassador, Archon Vexthor demands immediate audience." "Of course he does," Elena sighed. "Except in the formal receiving room." She turned to Cathara. "Ready to face your first political storm as my ward." The princess's skin rippled with determination. "I faced worse storms alone." The Archon swept in moments later, his engineered perfection a stark contrast to the embassy's natural aesthetics. "Ambassador Chen, the council requires Princess Cathara's immediate return for genetic evaluation." "On what grounds?" Elena kept her voice pleasant. "The princess's condition may be deteriorating. That display with the organic matter." "My ward's ability to interact with living things seems less like deterioration and more like evolution," Elena interrupted. "Fascinating, really. I wonder what other abilities your optimization programs might have accidentally suppressed." Vexthor's perfect features twisted. "You speak of things you don't understand. Our optimization created peace, unity." "Conformity," Cathara's voice cut through his, musical tones carrying unexpected authority. "You created conformity, Archon, and called it peace. You dare." Vexthor stepped forward, his skin pulsing with anger. "You, who shamed your father, who refused tow, who fulfilled his last wish." Elena stepped between them. "A wish legally registered with the Concordat. Unless you're questioning the late king's judgment." The Archon's engineered composure cracked slightly. The king was, not himself in his final days. His research into prohibited histories. Prohibited histories. Elena's diplomatic instincts sharpened. What kind of histories will a genetically perfect society need to prohibit? "That information is classified," Vexthor snapped. "Princess Cathara, this is your last chance. Return voluntarily for optimization, or what?" Cathara's skin blazed with aurora patterns so bright that Vexthor stepped back. "You'll force me, like you forced the others, like you tried to force my father." Elena watched the interplay with growing understanding. The king wasn't researching prohibited histories, she said slowly. He was preserving them. In you. Cathara's skin patterns stuttered, surprise rippling through them. Vexthor's perfect face went absolutely still. Ambassador Chen, he said softly, you are involving yourself in matters far beyond your understanding. The Council has been patient with humanity's primitive philosophies, but if you persist in this course, you'll what? Elena smiled her most diplomatic smile. Restrict Earth's access to quantum communications. Risk exposing why you're so afraid of one unmodified princess. I am not afraid. Vexthor's voice carried harmonics of pure rage. No. Elena gestured to Cathara, whose skin now painted the room with impossible colors. Then why are your optimization protocols failing right now? The Archon looked down at his own skin, where perfect patterns were dissolving into chaos. With visible effort, he restored his engineered symmetry. This isn't over, he promised, and swept out. Once he was gone, Cathara turned to Elena. How did you know about his protocols? I didn't, Elena admitted. But I've spent years watching your people maintain their perfect patterns. None of them ever glitch like that. What did you do? Cathara's skin swirled with uncertainty. I don't know. Sometimes, when I feel strongly, others' patterns just respond. Elena thought of the glowing orchid, of prohibited histories, of a king who chose an unmodified human to guard his greatest treasure. Your father knew, she said softly. Whatever he discovered in those histories, it was important enough to preserve in you, important enough to protect with his dying wish. But why you? Cathara's skin had settled into subtle waves of blue-green curiosity. Why a human? Elena smiled. Because humans have a long history of appreciating the beauty in imperfection. And, she added, watching the play of aurora patterns across the walls, we're rather good at turning flaws into advantages. Cathara's skin brightened. Is that what we're going to do? Turn my flaws into advantages? No, Elena said firmly. We're going to prove they were advantages all along. But first, she activated her secure terminal. We need to find out what your father discovered in those prohibited histories. How do you feel about a little classified research? Cathara's answering smile lit up the room. Literally. I feel like making my father proud. Looking at the determination in her ward's expression, Elena had a feeling they were about to discover exactly why the Council was so afraid of natural evolution, and why a dying king had trusted humanity to protect it. Echoes of the past. The ancient data archives beneath the Luminary's central repository stretched for kilometers, their crystalline matrices holding millennia of carefully curated history. Elena and Cathara moved silently through the dimly lit corridors, their access granted by Elena's diplomatic credentials, for now. These records predate the optimization programs, Cathara whispered, her skin dimmed to match the low light. The Council claims everything before was chaos and suffering. History written by the victors usually is, Elena replied, scanning the archive designations. Your father's research authorization accessed Section 7 Alpha. It should be. A distant alarm echoed through the archives. Cathara's skin flashed with anxiety. They're scanning for unauthorized patterns. Can they detect you? Not if I. Cathara's skin shifted, taking on the metallic sheen of optimized luminary. The effort made her tremble. Elena squeezed her hand. Don't. Remember what happened to the orchid. Maybe your natural patterns are exactly what we need down here. They reached Section 7 Alpha, its ancient crystals darker than the rest. Elena placed her hand on the access panel, using her diplomatic override. Nothing happened. These crystals are dead, Cathara said. The data's been purged. All locked away. Elena studied the crystalline matrix. Your father accessed this section repeatedly before his death. Why here? What did he find? Cathara moved closer to the crystals, her aurora patterns returning. Where her light touched the dark crystals, Tiny sparks of response flickered deep within. "They're not dead," she breathed. "They're dormant." Her skin blazed brighter, and the ancient crystals began to hum. Holographic data sprouted around them like a forest of light, but instead of the perfect geometric patterns of modern luminary script, these were organic, flowing forms that moved like living things. "This is impossible," Cathara's voice shook. "This writing is responding to my patterns." Elena watched in fascination as the ancient text shifted and flowed, reorganizing itself around Cathara's natural luminescence. Not impossible, inherited. Before Cathara could respond, a new alarm blared, closer this time. Security forces would be minutes away. "Download everything you can," Elena commanded, keeping watch on the corridor. "We'll decode it later." Cathara pressed her hands to the crystal matrix, her skin synchronizing with its ancient rhythms. Data flowed between them like water, the original language of her people writing itself into her very patterns. "Ambassador Chen." Archon Vexthor's voice echoed through the archives. "Did you think we wouldn't monitor the princess's energy signature? Step away from the prohibited data immediately." Elena smiled grimly. "Prohibited? Like Cathara's abilities? Like the truth about what optimization really cost your people? You understand nothing." Vexthor emerged from the shadows, flanked by security drones. His perfect features had hardened into mask-like stillness. "The optimization saved us from chaos, from the wild mutations that threatened to tear our civilization apart." Mutations. Cathara's voice carried new harmonics, ancient knowledge singing in her tone. "You mean like this?" Her skin erupted with light, not the usual aurora patterns, but something older, primal. The security drones sparked and fell, their optimization protocols shattered by frequencies they had no defense against. Vexthor staggered, his own perfect patterns disrupting. "What are you doing? Stop this primitive display." Primitive. Elena watched in awe as Cathara's light spread through the archive crystals, awakening more dormant data. "Look around you, Archon. This isn't primitive. This is your people's true heritage." The awakened crystals painted the archives with living light, showing images of ancient luminary. They glowed with natural patterns, each unique, using their variations to communicate, to create, to shape the very fabric of reality. "The optimization didn't save you from chaos." Cathara's voice carried the weight of newly recovered history. "It severed you from your power, from your connection to the quantum field itself." "Lies," Vexthor snarled, but his perfect symmetry was cracking, showing glimpses of natural patterns beneath. "Truth," Elena countered. "Your king discovered it, didn't he? That's why he protected Cathara, why he kept her natural. She's not a flaw in your perfect system. She's living proof that your perfect system is the real flaw." More alarms joined the chorus. Heavy footsteps approached from multiple directions. "Time to go." Elena grabbed Cathara's hand. "Can you disable their security systems like you did the drones?" Cathara's skin pulsed with newfound confidence. "I can do more than that." She pressed her other hand to the archive crystal one last time. "I can wake up the entire network." Light exploded through the crystalline matrices, racing through the archaeological complex like lightning through neural pathways. In its wake, dormant systems surged to life, responding to patterns that hadn't been seen in millennia. "What have you done?" Vexthor's horror was visible even through his degrading optimization. "Reminded them what they used to be," Cathara said softly. "What we all used to be, what we could be again." They ran, leaving chaos in their wake as ancient systems reactivated, optimization protocols failed, and the carefully maintained perfection of luminary society began to crack. Behind them, Vexthor's enraged scream carried harmonics that hadn't been heard since before the optimization. The raw, unfiltered sound of natural emotion. The perfect trap. The Earth Embassy's secure room hummed with energy as Cathara projected the stolen data onto its walls. Ancient luminary text flowed like liquid light, telling a story that would shatter an empire. The optimization wasn't about perfection. Cathara's voice trembled as she translated. It was about control. Our natural abilities, our connection to the quantum field, it made us too unpredictable, too free. Elena studied the cascading symbols. Your people could manipulate quantum states naturally, without technology. Not just manipulate. Cathara's skin rippled with inherited memories. We were quantum-entangled beings, each pattern unique, but all connected. The optimization didn't enhance us, it isolated us. The room's security system chimed. Ambassador, emergency broadcast from the High Council. A hologram materialized. Vexthor, his perfect features arranged in an expression of grave concern. Citizens of the Concordat, a grave threat has emerged. The human ambassador and the defective princess have activated dangerous prehistoric technology. For your safety, all quantum communications will now be restricted. Any unauthorized pattern fluctuations should be reported immediately. He's afraid, Elena observed. The archives weren't just history, they were proof. Proof that his perfect society is built on a lie. Cathara's skin darkened. They'll come for us now. The council can't risk. The lights went out. Backup systems engaged. Elena's security AI announced. Warning. Quantum interference detected. Through the embassy's windows, they watched as darkness swept across the capital station. Section by section, the perfect crystalline spires lost their glow. They're shutting down the grid, Elena realized, trying to stop the spread of activated archives. Not just that. Farah pressed a hand to the window. Where her skin met the crystal, faint patterns sparked in response. Feel it. The quantum field, it's different. They're trying to suppress the natural frequencies, force everything back into optimized patterns. Elena's diplomatic training kicked in, analyzing possibilities. Can they do that? Rewrite quantum physics itself. They did it before. Cathara's voice carried ancient sorrow. That's what the optimization really was. A quantum cage, tuned to allow only perfect, predetermined patterns. The darkness crept closer to the embassy, crystal by crystal. They're not just containing the archives, Cathara whispered. They're erasing them. Everything my father tried to preserve. No. Elena's voice hardened. Your father didn't just preserve history in those archives. He preserved it in you. She activated her emergency protocols. And I didn't become the youngest human ambassador by playing it safe. Time for Plan B. We had a Plan B. We do now. Elena's fingers flew over her console. Remember how your patterns affected that orchid? Made it respond to quantum frequencies it shouldn't have been able to detect. You want me to? What? Quantum entangle with plants. Better. Elena grinned. I want you to entangle with every organic thing on this station. Every plant in the hydroponics bays, every bacterial culture in the medical labs, every human being who still carries natural quantum patterns in their DNA. Cathara's skin flashed with alarm. That's impossible. I can't. Your ancestors could. You have their memories now, their knowledge. The council is trying to suppress quantum frequencies. Fine. Let's give them more frequencies than they can handle. Outside, the darkness reached the embassy's outer crystals. They began to dim. Even if I could, Cathara's patterns swirled with doubt. It would take too long. The suppression field. Will buy us time, Elena finished. They have to maintain perfect patterns, perfect control. But chaos? Chaos spreads exponentially. Understanding dawned in Cathara's shifting colors. Like my effect on their optimization protocols, natural patterns disrupting artificial ones. Exactly. They built a quantum cage for predetermined patterns, but natural life, it adapts, it evolves, it finds new frequencies. Cathara squared her shoulders, her skin beginning to pulse with ancient rhythms. I'll need help, a focal point to start the entanglement. You have one. Elena extended her hand. I'm as unmodified as they come. Pure, messy, quantum noisy humanity. Their hands met. Cathara's patterns flowed over Elena's skin like living aurora. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Elena gasped as new awareness flooded her consciousness. She felt the quantum field Cathara had described, not the rigid, controlled frequencies of optimized luminary society, but a wild, dancing symphony of possibilities. Through their connection, she sensed others, the embassy staff, their natural patterns resonating with Cathara's call, the hydroponics bay, thousands of plants suddenly awakening to quantum frequencies they'd forgotten they could detect, medical labs where ancient bacterial DNA remembered patterns older than civilization. It's working, Cathara breathed. They're remembering. All of them. Outside, the darkness reached their window and stopped. Natural light began to pulse through the crystal, spreading outward instead of retreating. Not the perfect engineered glow of luminary technology, but the living radiance of quantum evolution set free. In the distance, alarms began to wail. Evolution's edge. The Concordat's grand chamber had never seen chaos like this. Through the quantum-awakened crystals, Elena and Cathara watched as millennia of perfect control unraveled. Luminary citizens flooded the streets, their optimized patterns failing as natural frequencies reasserted themselves. Some fought the change, desperately trying to maintain engineered perfection. Others surrendered to it, their skin blooming with colors unseen for generations. The suppression field is failing, Cathara reported, her patterns now pulsing in harmony with the quantum cascade they'd initiated. Too many natural frequencies, too much life. Through their sustained connection, Elena felt it too. The quantum field wasn't just awakening, it was evolving, finding new patterns, new possibilities. Like a symphony that had been forced to play a single note, suddenly remembering its full range. Ambassador Chen. Vexthor's voice cut through their observations, broadcast across all remaining channels. His perfect features had cracked completely, showing chaotic patterns beneath. You've disrupted centuries of peace, unleashed primitive forces that your people were born to control, Elena interrupted. Not through suppression, but through harmony. Show them, Cathara. The princess stepped forward, her natural patterns now intermixed with ancient knowledge. Through the quantum-sensitive crystals, her image reached every corner of the station. Look at your own skin, Cathara commanded. Feel the patterns trying to emerge. These aren't flaws. They're not mutations. They're who we were meant to be. She raised her hands, and the quantum field sang. Images from the ancient archives projected around her, luminary ancestors using their natural patterns to shape reality, to communicate across vast distances, to create art that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Your optimization didn't perfect us. Cathara's voice carried harmonics of ages past. It caged us, limited us to a single pattern when we were meant to embody infinite possibilities. Lies. Vexthor snarled, but his own skin betrayed him, rippling with untamed frequencies. The ancient patterns were dangerous, unpredictable. They threatened the very fabric of your control. Elena stepped forward. That's what this was really about, wasn't it? Not perfection, not peace, control. Through their quantum connection, she felt Cathara access deeper archives, older memories. The optimization program wasn't created to save us, the princess revealed. It was created to stop us from discovering what we could really do. The chamber's crystals pulsed as she projected the final truth, images of ancient luminari, not just manipulating the quantum field, but expanding it, growing beyond physical form, evolving into something the council couldn't control. They were becoming more than physical beings, Elena understood suddenly. The optimization wasn't evolution, it was enforced devolution, trapping quantum beings in static patterns. Our ancestors weren't primitive, Cathara's voice resonated with generations of suppressed knowledge. They were transcending, and the council couldn't allow that. Vexthor's composed facade shattered completely. You understand nothing. Without control, without perfect patterns, there is only chaos. No, Elena countered. Without change, without growth, there is only stagnation. Your perfect society has been dying by degrees, each generation more limited than the last. Around them, the quantum awakening reached critical mass. Throughout the station, optimization protocols failed as natural patterns reasserted themselves. The rigid frequencies that had caged luminary potential for centuries dissolved under the onslaught of infinite possibility. You've doomed us all, Vexthor raged, his own patterns now wild and uncontrolled. No, Cathara's voice was gentle. We freed you, look. Through the quantum-sensitive crystals, they could see it happening. Luminary citizens, their natural patterns unleashed, went descending into chaos. They were remembering. Ancient knowledge encoded in their very beings began to surface. Patterns harmonized spontaneously, creating new forms of communication, new ways of connecting. This is what my father discovered, Cathara realized. Not just our history, but our future. The next step in our evolution. Elena felt it through their connection. The quantum field wasn't just awakening, it was expanding. The luminari were remembering how to grow beyond their physical forms, how to exist in multiple states simultaneously. The optimization didn't just trap you in perfect patterns, she said softly. It trapped you in a single dimension when you were meant to inhabit many. Thara's skin blazed with the light of new understanding. We thought optimization was making us more than we were. When really, Elena finished, it was making you less than you could be. Around them, the perfect crystalline architecture of the station began to change, responding to the quantum evolution of its creators. The rigid geometric patterns flowing into organic forms that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The age of enforced perfection was ending. The age of infinite possibility was beginning. And somewhere, Elena thought, a king who had hidden the truth in his daughter's flaws was watching his final gambit unfold exactly as planned. Natural selection. The Grand Assembly Hall shimmered with quantum possibilities, its crystals now existing in multiple states simultaneously. Where once perfect symmetry had reigned, organic patterns flowed like living art, reflecting the transformation of luminary society itself. Elena stood beside Cathara, watching as millennia of rigid hierarchy dissolved into new forms of order. Emergency sessions had been called. Representatives from every sector of luminary space gathered to face what their society had become. The optimization protocols have failed across 80% of our territories, First Speaker Lyra announced. Unlike Vexthor, she had embraced the change, her skin dancing with natural patterns. We cannot restore the old frequencies. Because we're not meant to, Cathara stepped forward. Her presence commanded attention, natural patterns now interwoven with ancient knowledge. For too long, we've seen our quantum nature as something to be controlled. But look. She gestured, and the hall's crystals responded, showing scenes from across luminary space. Citizens discovering abilities hidden for generations. Children whose patterns naturally synchronized with quantum technology. Artists creating works that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This isn't chaos, Elena added. This is evolution finding its path again. And what of those who cannot adapt? The question came from a group of traditionalists, their optimization protocols barely holding. Those who require the stability of perfect patterns. We're not proposing to force anyone to change. Cathara's voice carried harmonics of compassion. That was the Council's mistake. Natural evolution allows for diversity, different patterns, different paths. Elena activated her diplomatic channels, sharing data from Earth's scientific archives. Humanity learned this lesson early. Genetic diversity isn't a weakness, it's survival insurance. Every variation is a potential advantage in waiting. Like your patterns, First Speaker Lyra addressed Cathara. What we saw as flaws were actually preserved abilities. Your father. knew that optimization was reaching its limits, Cathara completed. Each generation, our connection to the quantum field grew weaker. He saw not just our past in the ancient archives, but our future. Without change, without evolution, we were slowly dying. Through the quantum-sensitive crystals, they could all see it. Generations of data showing declining birth rates, increasing pattern instabilities, subtle signs that the enforced perfection was becoming unsustainable. The optimization protocols weren't evolution, Elena explained. They were stasis. And in a quantum universe, nothing survives in stasis forever. A surge of energy rippled through the assembly as more optimization protocols failed. But instead of chaos, new patterns emerged. Natural frequencies found harmony with artificial ones. Order and chaos danced together, creating something entirely new. We offer a compromise. Cathara's voice carried authority inherited from both her father and the ancient knowledge now part of her being. Those who wish to maintain optimization may do so, but no more suppression, no more enforced perfection. Let each luminary choose their own path. And what of our place in the Concordat? Someone asked. Our agreements were based on perfect pattern control. Elena stepped forward. Earth proposes new agreements. Your quantum technologies combined with human adaptability. Natural evolution enhanced by artificial advancement, not controlled by it. She gestured, and the crystals showed possibilities. Human scientists working with quantum-awakened luminary, developing technologies that worked with natural patterns instead of suppressing them. Optimization protocols reprogrammed to enhance natural abilities rather than replace them. We stand at a crossroads, Cathara declared. We can cling to enforced perfection and continue our slow decline, or we can embrace change, evolution, the infinite possibilities of our quantum nature. Through their sustained connection, Elena felt the shift in the quantum field. The rigid frequencies that had caged luminary potential were dissolving, replaced by harmonics more complex and beautiful than any engineered pattern. Your father would be proud, she whispered to Cathara. The princess's patterns rippled with emotion. He knew this would happen. That's why he chose you. Someone who would appreciate imperfection, who could help our people remember that evolution isn't about reaching perfection. It's about growing beyond what you thought was possible, Elena finished. Around them, the assembly hall continued to transform, crystal structures flowing into new forms that honored both order and chaos. Perfect symmetry melted into natural patterns, creating architecture that existed in multiple quantum states that responded to the evolving consciousness of its creators. The age of rigid perfection was ending, but something far more extraordinary was beginning. Natural selection was taking its course again, guided not by artificial constraints, but by the infinite possibilities of quantum evolution. And at its heart, a princess once mocked for her flaws stood revealed as the herald of her people's renaissance.